Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Let's Go Racing, episode number 168. Tyler Jones here with you. Dominic Logano here with you, as well as we have a new champion in the NASCAR Cup Series. Joey Logano takes home his third career title. We will share our thoughts on the win for Joey Logano as he wins the race and the title both on Sunday. Also look back at the rest of championship weekend, share our final thoughts on the 2024 season coming up in just a little while from right now. We'll have our news and notes segment coming up later with the latest headlines in the sport, and then we'll do our mailbag segment coming up later on as well. Dominic joins me right now. Dom, first off, before we talk too much shop, how was Phoenix? How did you enjoy the championship weekend there at Phoenix International Speedway? How did the championship atmosphere live up there?
It was great. It was awesome. And you always know it's going to be a great time at Phoenix Raceway, but especially with the championship on the line. I wasn't there for the truck race, but I was there for Xfinity and Cup. And there were a lot of people at the grandstand Saturday. And then Sunday, being a sold out race, I believe it was sold out since September. So this race had been sold out a long, long time. A lot of fans at the grandstands and a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, too, Tyler. A lot of media there at the Phoenix Raceway. And that media center might be the fullest I have seen it in a long, long time. So there was no shortage of reporters and photographers and so many outlets on hand. Netflix had a little studio set up there in the media center too, a little room at least I should say. So really neat. And I got to say that energy too. You have Justin Allgaier finally winning that championship and getting over that hump, and the extreme popular part of that too. The fact that you had drivers who weren't even in the field coming to the championship stage to congratulate. Ryan Blaney was another that comes to mind on that. Dale Earnhardt Jr. wouldn't let that champions flag go, and he brought that in the media center. And really, really cool environment. And then you look at the race Sunday, and it made you wonder too, Tyler. Lap one, Ty Gibbs has that issue in the dog leg, and he's out of the race. It makes you think, oh, we're in for a big crash fest kind of race, and we didn't really see that. And I think we were talking on the show last week. It's probably going to come down to long runs, and that's what the race ended up coming down to. But nonetheless, great. We'll talk more on that in a few. But a great environment, great atmosphere, and gosh, the fans do come out from every part of the country and every part of the world to this race weekend. There were a lot of people there from all around the world. Really cool to see that.
That's great. I'm glad you had a good time. I enjoyed myself in Miami, and it worked out timing-wise, Dom. I got home just in time to catch the race on TV, and I thought it was a very exciting race. We'll discuss that here in just a bit. But with that said, Joey Logano winning his third career title, and what a story, Dom. I mean, I think back to several years ago when Kyle Busch won a championship after missing the first 12 races, and that was a big shock, just what he was able to do, pull that off. This one, literally, Joey Logano was eliminated. At one point, he left the racetrack thinking his season was over with. And then we have the violation for Alex Bowman, and Joe Logano is all of a sudden back in the playoff picture. And then he wins to get to the championship 4. And then he wins again to win the championship. And he ended up winning 3 playoff races. And I know that the old timers, the old time folks don't like that a guy like Joe Logano, who you could argue should have been eliminated, shouldn't have been there, wins the championship. And this is a team that wasn't dominant throughout the season. I get all that. But there's something to be said about winning when it matters, Dom, of winning to clinch the spot to get in the championship 4, of winning the championship race, of winning 30% of the playoff races here. That's domination in the postseason. He turned it on when it mattered most, and I think he's a worthy champion. I thought what he did there at the end, too, to hold off Ryan Blaney in the fashion that he did when Blaney had the faster car, when Blaney had all the momentum, I thought it was an incredible job by Joe Logano and that 22 team. And for as much it's made about Joey and his historical perspective, we'll talk about that here in a moment with the three championships. I think Paul Wolfe is inserting himself as one of the best crew chiefs of all time as well. What was your thoughts and takeaways from Phoenix of Joe Logano taking home his third title here?
Had a lot to digest and think about on that drive home Sunday night from Phoenix to New Mexico, and what we had witnessed that that race weekend, and Logano coming from behind, and the penalties, and I don't know if penalty is the right word, but the inspection issues from from earlier in the weekend, and kind of using the media as a tool to talk some crap, and Logano said, "Hey, I need the biggest motivator, and to put pressure on myself. What a better way to do that?" Because they said that they had a fast car. So I think it was Matt Weaver of Auto Week or Toby Christie had asked a question about, like, what would you say to the haters that would think this is not a worthy champion? And Joey Logano straight up called it BS. That yes, we're all going to race different in whatever format we have. It would pretty much saying and echoing what you said, Tyler. It rose to the occasion. Now you look at some of the stats behind it. As an average finish of 17.1, I believe that was the 12th highest in the Cup Series season this year. That is the worst for all time for any Cup champion, any season dating back to 1949 through
All
present day.
time.
All time. The previous worst, Tyler, was Ryan Blaney the year before with a 14.1. But I want to read you something, and I want you to tell me if you agree or disagree with this. But my colleague at the Racing Experts, dear friend of the show as well, Jonathan Field, wrote this in one of his pieces where it says analysis. While some may criticize the relatively poor average finish that Logano amassed this year, it reflects how the ingredients of a championship have changed. Logano and the 22 team earned the title with the format that everyone had. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Yeah, he did what he needed to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if I would say, Dom, that if we were running, a Winston Cup format or even the old Chase format at the beginning of this, driving styles would be different. The guys wouldn't race the way they do. I don't think it's fair to criticize Joey and say, "Oh, 17th place average finish and all this." Honestly, like without these stages and without the way the point system is set up the way it is, you wouldn't have guys taking chances the way they do. You would have more guys maybe saying, "You know what, instead of, conserving fuel or whatever it may be, I'll settle for the top 10." Like that's the way the system's played out. Joey Logano didn't do anything wrong by winning the championship the way he did.
I agree with you, Tyler. And I think you said it best too, because they would race different if it was a different series of points or a point system. However, this was all set up, they played by the rules that they were all given. And it reminds me too, and I thought of you and the other day when we were talking about playoffs and drivers making and worthy champions. We've had these discussions over the last few weeks, kind of going back with maybe a football analogy. I think you hear these conversations bring up, especially like if a team, and I think of the Seahawks, I think it was 2010, 2011 when they made the playoffs at 7-9, but they went and won a playoff game. That was
Won the
very
division.
won the division, won a playoff game, finished the year, what, 8-10. I mean, people were saying, is a team with a losing record worthy of making the postseason? I feel like we have a situation where you could maybe draw some parallels between that scenario and what we have with Logano, but the 22 team won when it counted. And the system rewards winning. NASCAR said they want to reward winners. Well, you can go and make the argument that Kyle Larson, 6 wins, didn't make the postseason or didn't make the championship, or rather, but the team didn't win when it mattered the most. You have good teams not go on to the Super Bowl. You have good teams not in the World Series or the NBA Finals. It's all about stepping up at the right time. And that 22 team, I think, is showing time and time again they have figured something out with the system. And I gotta say too, we saw it in 2022. Winning that first race in Las Vegas gives the team an advantage. And Logano acknowledged that too, that they weren't on their A game at Homestead. They weren't on their A game at Martinsville because they weren't focused on those races. They were focused on Phoenix, and it showed in the results and it showed in the stat column.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right about that. Let's talk about the historical perspective. I know you're a nerd and you got some numbers, I'm sure, pulled
Oh, what
up,
gave it away?
right? Three-time champion, joined some elite company, and now has the most championships of any active driver in the sport right now, surpassing Kyle Busch, who he was tied with two, and with that third title. I mean, I look at Joey's career, Dom, and the way I would frame it up is kind of like what we talked about. Maybe he's never even dominated. He's probably not had one of his championships where he had a dominating year, but he always is running consistent and knows how to win races and win when it counts. He's won the big ones at Daytona. He's he's won all the big ones throughout his career, and I think the legacy of Joey Logano at this point in his career, and he's far from over by any stretch of the imagination. There could be more titles in his future too. I think the way we'll remember Joey is kind of kind of like Kevin Harvick in this sense. He's got the clutch gene. He wins the big races. He wins when it matters. Like maybe he's not going to win 9 or 10 races a year, but as David would like to say, you can never count out Joey Logano.
You can never count out Joey Logano. And he's the fifth champion. Get this, Tyler, at the age of 35 or under to have three championships under his belt. He's joining elite company with that. David Pearson had three titles by the time he was 35. Logano's 34, by the way. Petty had four. Gordon had four. Jimmy Johnson had five. And you look at we'll talk about the all-time wins list in this show. But okay, let's talk there for a second. 36 wins. Okay, putting that number in perspective now, he has won the equivalent of a full Cup Series schedule now as a NASCAR Cup Series winner. And then when you look at the championship numbers, three championships. That ties him with David Pearson, Lee Petty, Tony Stewart, Darrell Waltrip, and Cale Yarborough. The next one up on the list would be Jeff Gordon, fourth all time. He grew up a Jeff Gordon fan, and I think somebody had asked him in the media center about that. How can you imagine that you're one away from Tom Gordon? You grew up a Gordon fan. He's like, I've never really thought about that.
Yeah. And, you know, I look at Joey too, Dom, and I think it's fair to say he is underrated. There was so much hype about him coming in. Best thing since sliced bread, according to Mark Martin and all that. And, you know, becoming the youngest Cup Series winner of all time. And then obviously things kind of didn't work out with Joe Gibbs, and he revitalized his career at Penske, did a great job there. But you think about just the public, perception of the top drivers in the sport. I think if you ask most people who's the best driver in NASCAR right now, people say Kyle Larson, and rightfully so. And if you asked who's the most accomplished, like, NASCAR driver, I think the average person of active drivers would say Kyle Busch. And then if you were to ask people to name, who are the best guys, probably, Chase Elliott would come up. Um, Martin Truex Jr.'s name would have come up. Obviously, he's retiring now.
Larson.
Oh, yeah, Larson. It feels like Joey's forgotten about here.
Mhm.
He is a three-time champion. He's won the big races. Like, why it's why are we not giving him the credit where credit's due? I mean, this is an all-time great in Joey Logano. Do you feel the same way? Like he's gone from being so hyped going in to now being underrated.
So two-part there too, I think, because very rarely do you have, like, think about any industry. This isn't just sports, but anytime you hear about a child prodigy, and very rarely does a child prodigy actually live up to their names. And the one that comes to mind outside of Joey Logano would be Lewis Hamilton in Formula One. But Logano, outside of those rough years he had at Gibbs, kind of had a chip on his shoulder after the fact, and he acknowledged it too on Sunday night. There's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. There were no hard feelings. It was a business decision, but he has lived up to the hype. He's won the three championships, and yet he still does not have that same conversation air to him like you would some of these other greats. But I will say this though, Tyler, we've looked too, like the last couple of years we do the show, and we even look at the odds for the race a weekend. How many times are we talking about Logano having plus 2,000 or plus 3,500 odds and not having good odds? Even I want to say before the Las Vegas race that they won this year, Tyler, that the 22 team, because they were on the outside looking in, fifth or sixth in points, they were 40-1 or 35-1. Somebody needs to fact check me on that, but they had some very long shot odds to win the championship this year at that late in the season. So the credit isn't given where the credit's due. I think there's a lot of flying under the radar, but yet at the same time, Logano's going to top 10 you to death. He's going to top 5 you to death. He's going to pick up stage points where it matters. He may not be leading those laps like we see Larson or Hamlin or Truex like we've become accustomed to seeing, but we know Logano's going to be up front a lot. And I would even say to maybe his credit or however you want to look at it, in 2015, the numbers you were describing, where we don't see Logano win 9 races or have good runs like that. That year was 2015 for him, and then just a bad round of eight and the Kenseth incident at Martinsville messed up his chances of making that championship four. But he was the odds-on favorite at that time. I think he had 28 or 29 top 10 finishes on the year, 6 or 7 wins. Really good year. We haven't seen him replicate that, but he has been very consistent with these multi-win seasons. And Tyler, I will add now that Kyle Busch has not won and that 19-year streak comes to an end, which is a NASCAR record, Joey Logano now is the driver in sole possession of, as far as active drivers who have at least one win per season, his dates back to 2012. So that's going to be a 13-year streak of winning at least one race. That can't be underestimated either. You're doing something right if you're winning races every year.
Oh, no question, no question about it. One more thing on Joey, and then we'll kind of move on from here. I do want to talk about the other champions this weekend. Um, is there anything Joey can do, do you think, to change the public reception of him? Perception of him, rather. I mean, like, is it just continue to win championships? Is it he needs another dominant season? Does he need to go out there and win 8 or 9 races one year? Like, is there anything he can do, or is this how he's always going to be thought of? I think winning 3 championships should open up some eyes, but
You think so?
I think that's only going to do so much, in all honesty. Like, what can he do to change the public perception of him being just a good driver, not a great driver?
Well, I think everyone's going to have their opinions about this championship too, and the fact that they were out and they were in with the round of eight deal with Alex Bowman, and then the fact that he's had such a bad average finish and not a well-rounded year like maybe a Kyle Larson did. But nonetheless, I think you keep winning, you're going to keep getting positive press. I had somebody tell me one time they had a coach come up to complain, well, now why don't you never write anything good about us? Well, and the reporter's response was, you want good press, win a game. So I feel like you keep winning championships, you keep winning races, maybe that title turn a little bit, but maybe there's a little bit of a black mark or a black stain by some in the NASCAR nation by how this title was won. But I got to think 3 championships. Kyle Busch doesn't have 3 championships. Kevin Hart didn't win 3 titles. Denny Hamlin hasn't won a championship. So there's a lot of good drivers that maybe have more wins or better stat lines, but Joey's getting it done when it counts. That needs to be, I think, credited for something. Maybe the 22 team also likes flying under the radar too. Maybe that they can play into that role as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. And I wonder when it's all said and done. I think it's pretty well certain at this point he's going to have more championships than Kyle Busch. But are people going to say Kyle Busch was better than Joey Logano? Like, I feel like Dom, like that's the debate to be had if we're going to compare drivers. I think Kyle is going to have more wins when it's all said and done, but Joey's going to have more championships here. Um, Measuring where they're at right now, who do you think's had a better Joey? Or would you go with Kyle Busch?
I go with Kyle Busch just because he's had a more well-rounded, more longevity. I mean, maybe by a few years, but better all-around dominant seasons and a better all-around driver. But Kyle hasn't won 3 championships. Kyle had a lot of championship four appearances as well under this format, but he did have his 2 impressive title runs in 15 and in 19. But I would say the overall around better consistent driver has been Kyle Busch, but Joey Logano has been right there behind him. Remember in 2018, it was the big three with Truex, Harvick, and Busch, and to me, Joey Logano. So Logano's been there. Logano, it cannot be underestimated of how good that 22 team has been. But Kyle Busch and that longevity with the 18 team and what they were able to accomplish in the mid 2010s, certainly him and Jimmy Johnson would be the dominant drivers of that era.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you got a point, but it's hard to ignore now when you
It
look
is.
at what the 22 team has done. The other championships, real quick, let's talk about those real briefly. Let's start at the Xfinity side. Justin Allgaier bringing home his first career Xfinity Series championship. And Dom, I don't care who you root for. I think this is a feel-good story. Justin Allgaier, he's worked his ass off for a long time. He's been a mainstay in the Xfinity Series. He's seen a lot of these guys come and go through the farm system of the Xfinity Series to work their way to Cup. And he's been that Matt Crafton of the Xfinity Series, the mainstay of it. and run with Junior Motorsports and just been so consistent, contending for wins, running up front for a long time. This was a long time coming. It's hard not to feel good for Justin Allgaier here.
I think the numbers too entering this weekend. This was his seventh or eighth championship four appearance. He's finished runner-up twice. There's been a lot of close calls. Do you remember, Tyler, in 2021 when him and Cindric were going toe to toe? Last lap, last week, Allgaier's leading on the last lap, but Cindric had a better line going off into one, was able to clear him. So there's been a lot, or I'm sorry, that was 2020. There's been a lot of close calls with Allgaier, and I feel like the memes and the jokes and the lulls and everything has been around. Oh, he's like Denny Hamlin. He's like Mark Martin. He's Elliott Sadler. He's the Buffalo Bills of the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He just can't get it done. But put all that to rest too. And I think the way he did it too, Tyler, the fact that he took the lead spot with 4 laps to go, and then he survives 2 overtime attempts in the series. And I gotta say too, I don't know if you had caught wind of this or had heard, but when Riley Herbst came in the media center, you could tell it was a very pointed press conference. He was very, 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 what's the word I'm looking for? He was very much enjoying his media availability. I'll put it this way. But one thing he did say was that when he had gotten under Allgaier, he was willing to move Allgaier if that's what it took to go win that race. So that race could have been very much shouted and some crazy controversy had it played out a little bit different. But Riley Herbst didn't hold back in that. I think that would have been a very unpopular move. But the fact that Allgaier had been so close so many times, it was nice to see him get that done just from like I said, a popular standpoint too. So many drivers came up to congratulate him, but things could have been a little different Saturday had they played out a little bit different on that final lap.
Yeah, yeah, certainly. So, Truck Series, bit of an upset. Ty Majeski gets it done to bring home the title. We had talked so much about Corey Heim and Christian Eckes, and here we are, Ty Majeski, the champion, but he did what he needed to do.
And I got and figure to that list too, Tyler. He had the biggest advantage, like a Joey Logano or AJ Allmendinger type deal, where he had weeks to get this race prepped, had the number one pit stall box, but couldn't get it done in the end. We've talked a lot about Team Penske figuring out this next gen era. It seems like ThorSport has really figured out something in the truck series. They've become a little bit of a dynasty of sorts with Ben Rhodes, Matt Crafton, and these multi-champions that they've had over the years too. And Ty Majeski saying too how he was working as an engineer with the team. He gotten fired from his ride, I believe, it was in Xfinity, and was going to run part-time deals and ran part-time with Sport. I believe won a race in 21. He got elevated to a full-time role in 22, and that role has paid off.
Yeah, and I wonder with ThorSport, as good as they've been in the Truck Series, we saw GMS, get their way into the Cup Series, taking over, Petty Enterprises and buying that, turning that into Legacy Motor Club. Obviously, things haven't gone great for them, but I wonder with as good as Thor Motorsports have been, is there a future potentially for them moving up? Could we see them doing Xfinity or maybe making their way up to the Cup Series potentially? Or do you think they like where they're at there in truck?
I feel like they got to like where they're at, and especially not being in the NASCAR hub. They're based in Sandusky, Ohio, so they're not close to the hub. I don't know if that would make a difference or not because we did see that with Furniture Road Racing, but nonetheless, I feel like they've hit on something in that series, and I don't see them leaving anytime soon. And people I've talked with, that doesn't sound like that would be on the horizon. But as they say never in this business.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. Now let's get to the news and notes. What's happening?
Well, first off, we want to start off with the news over the weekend that hit about NASCAR champion, 1983 champion Bobby Allison passing away at the age of 86 after a brief illness. NASCAR and their communications team had sent a notification that the Allison family had said Allison had passed away at his home earlier on Saturday, November 10th. So our thoughts and prayers certainly with the Allison family, and certainly a mainstay in the Cup Series. You think of the legends of the sport, Tyler, 85 wins, and really cool to see that 85th win from that Bowman Gray race in the 70s finally got awarded to Allison, and he officially bumped up to the fourth place all-time winner in the Cup Series. But nonetheless, a family that has dealt with a lot of tragedy over the years with Davey, and I believe they had another brother that had died in a race car as well too, and I'm slipping on the name. But Bobby Allison has endured a lot of heartbreak throughout his life, and I know he and his wife had divorced, they'd gotten back together, and she passed away in 2015. So certainly a sad time, and really a somber note to end the season on. And I got to say too, from both races in the Xfinity and Cup Series, there was a moment of silence ahead of the race and during the pre-race festivities to honor Bobby the Allison family and their contributions to the sport. Can't be underestimated, Tyler. Very big legend of the sport. Went toe to toe with the biggest names: Richard Petty, Dale Earnhardt, David Pearson, Kelly Yarborough, Darrell Waltrip. What a legend in himself.
Yeah, what a career. 1983 champion, won the 500, won the Southern 500, won the World 600, won the Winston 500, won the Busch Clash, Hall of Fame inductee in 2011. And I know you love the win totals, Dom. 85 total wins in his career. I mean, just unbelievable. And the most noteworthy moment of his career may have been the infamous fight that he had with Kelly Yarborough in the 79 Daytona 500, which was kind of the launching of NASCAR becoming what it is today, that put the sport on the map that day. So I think when you look back at Bobby's career, Dom, it's twofold. It's not just that he had an incredible racing career, but his impact on the sport. Everybody loved Bobby, great guy, but the personality too. That certainly did wonders for this sport and for what he did in more ways than one.
Certainly so. And his impact went beyond the racetrack for sure. And I can tell you, the early days of me covering the sport at the track, 2014, 2015, Bobby Allison actually was a main staple at the track into his 70s. You would see him at the track interacting with fans. In fact, we got him to do a read for ESPN Radio, Albuquerque 101.7, the team, which was really, really cool. And they were using that up until the end of that show earlier this year. So nonetheless, really cool to have interacted with him a couple of times. We would have loved to have gotten him for Jeff's books. I know Jeff had beat Bobby at Martinsville in '84 when he won his first race at Hendrick. It was a kind of a deal where they were outdoing the brakes, and Bodine was able to conserve his brakes a little better and went around Allison on the outside at Martinsville, which is unheard of. So there was a lot of good stories, a lot of good perspective, and I thought it was interesting too. They had put their NASCAR had been the ones to send out the notification to the media. So I think there might have been some coordinating, making sure that the messaging was done correct and respectfully, which it was. And that in lieu of flowers, Bobby always considered himself a devout Catholic, and his home parish in Mooresville, the family was asking for people to make consider a donation either to that parish or to their Catholic parish at home.
That's nice. That's very honorable. Certainly thinking of the Allison family and wishing them nothing but the best throughout these times. Dominic, what else we got going?
So the end of an era too on the sponsorship side. So on a shifting gears on a much different note, Denny Hamlin taking to social media to announce on Sunday ahead of the Phoenix race, possibly a story that might have gotten lost with all the other headlines with the sport going on. FedEx would be departing at the end of the 2024 season and not returning to Joe Gibbs Racing. Certainly one of the longest eras, and I would argue, Tyler, one of the sponsors from the last of NASCAR's peak days is vacating the sport. The FedEx Number 11 has been a staple in the NASCAR garage and with Joe Gibbs Racing for nearly 20 years, but that comes to an end, much like Kyle Busch's winning streak. Kind of the same tenure, kind of odd and interesting. They were even with the same team for one point, but nonetheless, FedEx and their impact on the sport, you know that there was a lot of good marketing and those paint schemes over the years and the 11 FedEx colors. And even looking back to Tyler at Denny Hamlin's early days as a race car driver and racing go-karts, he raced a purple and white number 11. So it couldn't have been a better Hollywood script. Maybe winning a championship would have certainly done that. But nonetheless, the end of a long-lasting partnership as FedEx has been cutting back on their sports marketing over the years, the NASCAR team is their latest place to end.
Yeah, they've been struggling financially as a company, and so they've been needing to make cuts, and they've reduced their number of races kind of year by year. So it's not surprising that they made this move. I mean, we've seen Denny, with the Mavis paint scheme, which I love. That looks like a throwback car.
The turquoise or blue, whatever you want to call it, looks really nice.
Yeah, the Sports Clips car. We've seen Coca-Cola, a few others that when FedEx was first with that team, they were sponsoring all 36 races.
Mhm.
And it's just slowly step back and step back and step back. And,
And they were different colors too, Tyler. FedEx Kinkos, FedEx Air, FedEx Ground, like the different
yeah.
orange, red trim, the blues. There were some really cool paint schemes they had.
And I think it's one of those deals too. Yes, they had to step back for financial reasons. But I think when you're with a driver for a long time too, Dom, that if you're a big sponsor like that, you kind of have gotten your money's worth. Like you look at when Lowe's departed the 48 car with Jimmy Johnson, they were so tight at the hip. It's like, well, what more do we really have to gain? We already have, 20 years of videos and photos and all this stuff out there. What more do we really have to gain to keep spending money on this when we're struggling financially as a company? And I think with Denny Hamlin, he could race another 10 years and people are still going to think of him in the number 11 FedEx car.
Mhm.
That's his identity. And that's what people are going to think of for a long time. I don't think there's any hard feelings. It's just business. It just is what it is. But it does make me think another step of that, Dom, is Denny's future because he said a couple years ago that he would only leave JGR if FedEx left JGR. He said that he wanted to stay with JGR as long as FedEx was around, but if FedEx wasn't around, he'd be open to leaving. And we know that 2311 is trying to buy a third charter. I know he's on steel, and obviously you have some charter stuff going on with 2311 and Front Row Motorsports, that lawsuit they got going on right now and all that. But it does make me think this has to open the door for Denny to take the 11 car and go finish his career with his own team at 2311. I think now that FedEx is out of the picture, I very well could see that happening at the end of Denny's career, whenever that day comes, going racing for his own team.
I believe his contract's up at the end of 2025 as well too. So that'll be something very interesting that I'm sure we'll be following for the next calendar year. But man, you're gonna have to get off that bandwagon of the 11 going to 23. I know it's a great idea. It's just not gonna happen. There's no way Gibbs relinquishes the 11. I've been saying that. We've been going back and forth on this for years. No way Joe Gibbs parts with that 11. Not the
Why
number.
would he not when he's got the 18 on hold? He's going to want the 18 car back.
Maybe so, but he's had the 11 since 2004, 2005. There's no way Joe Gibbs lets that 11 car go with the 11 number because Hamlin wants to take it. We've seen,
I think given the choice, his next driver is going to be in the 18 car.
we'll see how this one plays out. I'm not sold on this
I
whole
will I will bet you a steak dinner right now that as we air shake,
rear shake. Yes.
I will bet you a steak dinner right now that whenever Denny departs, the next driver will be driving the 18 car.
Easy bet. I
Um,
just want a steak dinner, guys.
yeah, steak dinner of the winner's choice. Well, you
Sounds
can
good to
ring
me.
you can ring the bill up on me if you win this one. We can go to Ruth Chris or whatever you want.
Okay.
I don't care.
We'll do that.
Uh, but no, I think that they kept the 18 on reserve for a reason. I think this was the plan the entire time that Denny takes the 11 with him to his own team and the 18 comes back. That's
I'm
what
a
I think.
numbers guy. It'd be cool to see the 23 and the 11 in the same house. No, it's not happening.
Well, what's going to happen to the 18 then?
I know that number's been a part of their history since 93. It's
Why
still
would they keep it on reserve if they weren't going to bring it back?
maybe they're waiting for the right opportunity, like how we had RCR hold on to the 3 for 12 years, or Richard Petty Motorsports, or Petty Enterprises hold on to the 43 after Petty had retired. So now the 3 was different circumstances, of course, but I don't know, man. I just don't see that 11 making that jump over to 2311. It'd be great. It would sound nice. It would ring out really nice, but it's too perfect. It's just not going to happen.
One of those numbers has got to go to bring back the 18.
Possibly.
All right. Well, you've heard the bet here. The 11 car is going with Denny. And I think Joe cares about Denny. I think that he knows that Denny wants that. He'd be helping out Denny.
I
I
hope I'm wrong because I do like that. I really do like that. I just don't see it happening.
We'll see. We'll see.
Okay.
Maybe NASCAR lets Denny go like Elon Musk route and go XI on the side of the car.
XI. There you go.
Roman numerals, like it's the same thing. Might as well,
Yeah, maybe so. There could be something with that.
That'd be wild. Dom, anything else?
So we go over odds and we pick our next race. But Tyler, there's no next race, at least not till 2025. But that's not stopping odds makers from putting out their odds for the 2025 season. So for the final time this year, opening odds for the 2005 NASCAR Cup Series Championship. Tyler, unless you've seen them and know, who's your guess and who are sports makers and odd makers picking as the odds-on favorite without a lap turned in 2025 yet?
I got to guess Kyle Larson. I mean, won the most races this year. He's the people's champion, and he did so with missing a race, not running in the Coca-Cola 600. It's got to be Larson, right?
And what are the odds if it is him?
Uh, plus 1,000.
Now, that'd be good. I think those would be interesting odds. You got the right driver. Plus 500s. Divide that in half. Kyle
Okay.
Larson's your odds-on favorite to win the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series Championship at 5-1. Christopher Bell coming in at 5.5-1 or plus 550. Ryan Blaney, William Byron, and Denny Hamlin all coming in as a trio at plus 700 or 7-1. And then I don't know, Tyler, the name's starting to creep up. Maybe people are giving more respect to the defending champion. Joey Logano alongside Tyler Reddick at plus 850 or 8.5-1. Chase Elliott at 10-1. So those would be some of your plus 1,000 and under odds for the 2025 championship. And one that caught my eye, Tyler, Chase Briscoe taking over now the 19 car with Martin Truex Jr. He is going in as the plus 2,000 favorite in the 2025 championship at plus 2,000. So 20-1. I think that's an undervalued pick right there, just looking at those numbers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right.
Too
Uh,
early, Tyler? Are we talking odds way too early?
yeah, we're not going to give any picks today.
No. Yeah,
Uh,
it'd be crazy to.
but yeah, I mean, well, that does make sense. Yeah, I'll say this. I thought there would be more value on the championship winners than that.
Yeah.
This,
And that's probably as good as it's going to get. It's only going to get worse from there.
right? Yeah, exactly. Let's get to our mailbag segment real quick. You guys submit questions to us, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com, at Star Podcasts on Facebook and X as well. And our first question in the mailbag this week, this comes from Stephanie. Stephanie wants to know, guys, we've heard you answer what your favorite racetracks are. What are your favorite cities to visit on the NASCAR circuit? Dom, we'll start with you.
Oh, man. Great question. So, yeah, I feel like you have to do a little bit of sightseeing if you're going to these places and you're traveling great lengths to go do this job. There's a lot of fun. There's a lot of good food, a lot of good places. Las Vegas is always fun. Kansas City is always a good time. I like the Dallas Fort Worth area personally. That's one of my favorite places to go as well. Now they're all drivable for me, so I think that maybe weighs in a little bit of the decision. But Phoenix is cool, and if I'm picking somewhere to fly, I've enjoyed the city of Atlanta and that part of the country whenever we've gone to go cover races out there. So those places come to mind. Now, of course, Daytona would be an easy answer. Tyler, you and I have found some great pizza and great cheesecake and great bars in the Daytona Beach area, but it's very expensive to get out there. As anybody knows, if you're going to go cover the Daytona 500 or you're going as a fan to the Coke 600 or the Coke 400 rather, you know it's going to be an expensive trip because it's such a more remote place
It's
in
a haul.
comparison. Yeah. So those come to mind for me. Do you echo that as well, or are there other places I'm not thinking of?
Yeah. And I like this distinction from Stephanie between city and racetrack because, like Talladega, for example, great track,
Mhm.
great atmosphere. There ain't shit in that city. I mean, it's just nothing. Like that is the one track you ain't leaving. You ain't going anywhere else. You're staying in the infield right there. But City of Daytona is fun. It's kind of like a gift shop town of
Yeah.
sorts, but beach, plenty of good food, great times. I love Nashville. You guys know this if you've been listening to this show. That's probably my favorite place to go to. I love Nashville, I love Austin, and I love Vegas. And all three are very good races too on that front as well. The thing for me, like of the races I choose to go to, I always try to make a point. I want to go to a race that's in a good city to go to. I want to have a good time there besides just going to the race itself, making it a vacation of sorts. And that's what I've always enjoyed doing. And that's how I'll continue to do things. Now, Dom, we need to get you out to Austin this year. You need to experience. I know you'll love the racetrack itself, but the seen around Austin will blow your mind. Like, I mean, your buddy Matt Corson saw me get on a mechanical bull the last time we were together in Austin. Like, we can make that happen for you, Dom. We can get you on the bull.
Okay, well, I'll have to try that. Austin's on the short list. Nashville is Martinsville too. I know Martinsville is a very remote area of the country, but those three would be my top three. And I know you've been to two of them, so I'd have a good
I
little
still
tour
haven't
here.
call me a bad NASCAR fan. I still haven't been to Charlotte.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I've never been to Charlotte.
Wow.
I'm
I've been a
not.
few times. It's a
I've
great area, great part of the country, even outside of the racetrack.
I've never been to the racetrack. I've never even been to the city of Charlotte.
You've been to
Uh,
North Carolina?
Never been to North Carolina either. I'm supposed to go to Raleigh next month. But yeah, never been. So I need to make that happen too. So still got some places to go. Maybe I'll change that this upcoming year. Next question in the mailbag this week comes from Clay, and Clay wants to know, guys, what other sports will you be watching to pass the time in the NASCAR off season?
I'll be watching your sport, Tyler, that you cover near and dear to your heart every day and every professional working minute of your life. I know it revolves around the NFL, and I think it'd be awesome to work in the NFL and do some stuff with that. But even just watching as a fan, I mean, there's a lot to take in, and I feel like at one point, Tyler, for me, the NFL and NASCAR were very neck and neck, and then the stuff with TRE started taking off. That's definitely taken a lot more focus over the years. But when it's off season and there's Sunday and there's no racing on TV, you betcha football's on the TV screen.
And there's still a lot of football left. We're only in week 11 at this point.
That's
So
true.
if you've missed out, if you haven't gotten to watch a lot, there's still a ton of football to be played. I love college football more than anything else. I know I work in the NFL. I work in college football too. Not as much, but I'm more of a college fan. I do love them both. I'll be watching plenty of college football in the NFL. But I'm just a big sports fan. I like the NBA, college basketball. That's kind of be my focus the next several months is just watching whatever I can, enjoying myself. I mean, Dom, I'll be honest, maybe my favorite sport of all. And I'm not here to show my allegiances or anything, just keep it down the neutral side. But Dom, my favorite sport the last several months was the sport of American politics. That was not working in politics anymore, not working in news. Um, I got to just watch it as a spectator and just as a fan. And it was seeing these debates and following the polls and, the commentary and everything. It was like following a sport almost every single day. And, you got the Republicans versus the Democrats, like that felt like a team sport without, you know, any physical activity, basically.
Oh, it certainly did. I'm glad you brought that up. I was telling somebody the other day, like watching this election cycle and the down ballot races across the country all throughout this year felt like we were rooting for a sports team the entire year and just very invested, much like you are watching sports. So, no, I've enjoyed a lot of that too. Sports and politics are definitely the two things I really enjoy, and I think we've talked about it on this show, and I think we've had mailbag questions before about what we would cover outside of motorsports. I think it would be awesome to be a White House correspondent or to go cover Congress in Washington, D.C. I think just being around that arena or in that arena and seeing it on a daily basis would be really cool. I've had the pleasure to cover a couple events at the White House, and it's all been because of motorsports and NASCAR. But to be there on the White House grounds and interact with some of the people that do it on a daily basis gives me an even deeper appreciation for the people that do. I think it would be a fun job. If you had to pick White House or Congress or something else in DC, what would you cover?
Oh, I'd love to cover the White House.
Me too.
Uh, Especially what's coming up next. If you're a White House reporter, you're
Buckle
gonna be
up.
you're gonna be getting up early and checking Truth Social, and you just don't know what's coming up next. And even when I was working local radio in Lawrence, Kansas, uh, I would see updates come in from the former president, now the president elect, and that would drive the news for the rest of the day. And you're seeing it in real time, like, oh wow, we got to react to it right now. Like, yeah, it would be an interesting time to cover American politics right now. But yeah, it does feel like a team sport with American politics and just everything that's going on. And Dominic and I both have news backgrounds. We both worked in news. And people always ask me, and I'm sure Dom gets this question too. What made you get out of news? Why do you not, you know, like to cover news, whatever? And one of the things I would say, Dom, is I love politics. I could cover politics every day and
Yeah.
be all over it. What I hate covering is crime. I don't want to. I do not get any joy whatsoever about talking about somebody getting murdered or somebody getting shot. That's not fun to me.
Oh,
That's not fun.
no, not at all.
If it was just politics all day, it's just like covering sports. But like crime and all that, I'm not about. Severe weather coverage can be fun a little bit, but it gets nauseating after a while. Like that to me is what drove me out of news was like it's not just all fun in politics. Like there's some serious stuff that drains you a bit with crime being the biggest one.
Oh, the crime certainly does, and I think too. I definitely became a lot more jaded living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And Albuquerque has a bad rap for being a crime-ridden city and stolen vehicles and drugs and I got to see a lot of that working at I worked at the NBC affiliate for 2 years and I left and then I was rehired and I worked there for an additional 5 years like on a fill-in part-time intermittent kind of thing when people would take vacation. And it would remind me why I left the full-time thing because you listen to police scanners and you hear this stuff that doesn't even make the news. And there's a lot that goes on in that city. Or hey, go down to Metro Court and go file through all the criminal complaints. And you have a stack of them, 30 or 40 of them from the arrest from the days prior. And your job is to go through and go, okay, what 4 or 5 might make the most interesting for producers to run in their shows. And you're not running the 7 cars a day that were stolen the day before, or all the drug possession charges, or the petty theft, or the shoplifting, and it really makes you jaded. So stuff like that, plus the awful hours, that first year and a half were just not a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure I took a few years off my life with the stress and the anxiety. Never had sleep anxiety before taking a job in journalism. I don't know if you've ever had that working in media or news. And that's the only time I've ever had it because of the sporadic hours. But nonetheless, I'm not complaining about it. I think those experiences made me who I am. But my gosh, that is the reason why I left. And I'm no longer with the NBC affiliate. And fortunately, budget cuts happen. As we know, this business is very shaky around that. But I got to say, too, at the same time, you learn a lot working in a newsroom. I enjoyed the ride, but I'm with you, Tyler. Politics, there's just something about it. You cover politics every day. I feel like it would be draining in its own ways, but it'd also be rewarding in other ways too that would far outweigh that.
Yeah, I'm with you exactly there. Don, we got to wrap up. Before we go, what's first weekend of our off season now? Obviously, I don't have an off season, but you do here. What are you doing this weekend, Don?
Not traveling, which will be nah. I mean, I didn't do. I mean, I did some traveling this year, but no, staying home this weekend. In fact, my son turned 2 years old. Christopher, who's on the show with us last week, if you were watching along, yeah, he's turning 2, so we're throwing a little party for him here in town, and we have family coming from all around the state to come celebrate. So that'll be nice, a little pizza party, and be nice and take it easy with family and close associates here in town. How about you?
Where's my invite?
We sent you
Didn't,
one.
oh,
Well,
I
I
get,
wouldn't be surprised though, because I've had like 4 or 5 people say that they didn't get it, and yeah, it was.
I haven't. To be honest, I haven't checked my mail in about 2 weeks.
Oh, so why haven't you checked your mail? I can flip this on you too, huh?
I didn't know I was expecting something in the mail.
Oh, okay.
Otherwise I would have checked. I am
Oh,
bad about checking my mail though. That's
oh.
I just dread the idea of going to the mailbox and just having a bunch of junk mail I got to go through. So,
A lot of political ads from all sides, I'm sure, is what's sitting in your box right now.
oh, yes, yes, yeah, exactly. Um, but I'll be since I didn't get the invite to baby BB's birthday party. I will be enjoying the weekend at home, just kind of relaxing, recovering from my fun weekend in Miami. Well, all here's a little plug, by the way. I don't plug nearly as much as Dominic does on this show, but I will plug accordingly. On this week's Jones Report podcast, which will be out on Thursday, I will have a full recap and tell some fun stories of things that went on in Miami. I've told Dom a little bit about it, but you'll want to tune in to get the full story
It'll
on
be a really good listen, I will say, Tyler. And
it is Dom gonna
yeah.
be my opening monologue this week. It's that
Oh,
good.
I look forward to that. I look forward to that.
Yes.
Speaking of plugs, we got to plug our next guest, Tyler. We have a really big guest. It's episode 169. If you've been following since the beginning of this show, he had said he wanted to be back for this episode. We got him confirmed. Who's our big guest next week?
It is number 69 himself, Greg Biffle. Will be back. And every time we reach a 69 number, he's going to be on this show. Um, we had him on for episode 69. This is what his second or third time on.
This will be his third time. I want to say coincidentally, it was like episode 144 to kind of match that 44 number. It was right after it was announced as a finalist for the Hall of Fame. We brought him on the week after that.
That's right. That's right. We need to get him on episode 196 as well. Like try to find, the
All the
nine.
sixes and nines, because that's his thing, that number.
Yes, I love that number too. We'll put the checkered flag out in this edition of Let's Go Racing. As always, subscribe to the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you're listening to podcasts. Check us out on social media at Star Podcasts on X and Facebook, and also by email, davidstarpodcast@gmail.com. This show, part of the Studio Soapbox Network. Check out this show, The Jones Report, as we mentioned, where I'll tell that great Miami story coming up later in the week. And also the Coach Bo Knows podcast on all podcast platforms. For Dominic Aragon, I am Tyler Jones saying so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing.